Hi, welcome back to Change My Relationship podcast. I have with me here today again, Tawni Carney. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I think it was not even 2 weeks ago that we did the first one, and we were just like, we've got to do a second one. So I'm going to keep her bio short so we have plenty of time if you want to go back and read the whole thing. It's on the podcast that we did. I posted it 2 weeks ago. So you will be able to, in fact, we would both suggest that you listen to that too.
Yeah.
But she is the executive director of Eagles Wings Global. She has gotten a promotion since the last time that we were together. She was the acting director just for Orange County, California last time. She's going to do a phenomenal job. I know Judy Noble very well, who founded Eagles Wings Global about 30 years ago. And Tawni is God selected to take it over and bring it to even greater heights. So I'm and there's a significance there with Eagles Wings bringing it to greater heights. So I
Yeah.
know that you're going to be able to do that. But she's also been an entrepreneur. She's worked at churches. She has three children. She is very experienced working within a church culture and also with women who are struggling in abusive marriages and even some men. So we're going to get right into it. We're going to be talking about the topic of how to protect and support your children through a divorce from an abuser. And boy, is that one going to be power packed with information. And we just want to start off saying that we are not giving legal advice. If you need legal advice that involves the legal system and the actual divorce, please talk to an attorney and get legal advice that fits your specific situation. We're going to be talking about emotional and relational and practical and situational help and support and protection for your children. So welcome, Tawni.
Thank you. This is a pleasure.
No, I'm looking forward to many, many more opportunities for us to work together. So let's start off with what are some of the reasons people stay in abusive marriages?
Gosh. Carla, I immediately answer with one word and it's fear,
Yeah,
right? But sometimes that doesn't really help. We have to break it down.
yes.
We have to unpack what are we actually, what does fear look like in our everyday? Um, I would say that it's often, especially in church culture, where you can have faith in the miracles,
Mhm.
which, yes, have faith and yes, believe in the miracles, but you can stay in abuse with this thought pattern that overrides the abuse, where you're not even maybe you're just in a state of trauma because of the fear and you're not able to articulate, to pull it together, to have understanding that this is abusive, harmful. And so you choose to just have faith that there will be some magical, like new outcome, even though there's nothing changing in the process. And then also just who your community and who you're around, who you're allowing to speak over you, if they're encouraging you to stay. It's oftentimes you can hear just in the world we live in, there's people that have very strong feelings and loud voices, and you can oftentimes hear that two parents are better than one. And yes, that is the design of family, right? But there's a struggle in that when there's abuse in the picture. And it's not always the case that it's best for the family, for you as an individual and your children to stay in harm. And we're going to unpack more of that. But
Yeah.
yes, where there's that someone speaking over you, like, hey,
Mhm.
God hates divorce, like you're going to be a sinner. That's fear too.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's actually like, we talk about that. unfortunate.
Yeah.
People in authority use that as a response or a reaction sometimes.
Well, and I think another real fear too is if you're in a marriage with an abuser and you see that your children are also abused, whether that's emotional abuse or just with somebody being with the abuser being really harsh with them or really being mean. The fear is often if I've got to protect my kids in this marriage, if I break this marriage up, then I might have to give 50% custody and then my kids are going to be alone. And I hear my kids saying, let's just say, don't leave me alone with that parent. And you're thinking, well, how am I going to leave them half time with that parent? And that's a super big fear. So, and then just how am I going to make it financially? How am I going to make it emotionally? Maybe I still love
Right.
this person. I'm not going to be okay if I'm not with them. There's just so many fears. So I agree with you. That one word sums it up, fear. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
So, what are some of the dangers to children, though, when you stay in an abusive marriage? I think you mentioned a few of
Yeah.
them, but there's a ton of those too.
I think just from working with so many families, what I see often is that one of the most dangerous things is that the children begin to believe their normal situation is normal, but their normal is actually very harmful, very abusive, actually stunting their growth, placing trauma on them. So there's that huge umbrella of harm where you just don't ever want a child to live in those conditions, period. But even worse is they are emotionally processing this as this is how we do life,
And I
right?
think too, yeah, they're seeing like let's say it's the mom that's being abused. Their boys are seeing dad treat mom this way, and they're thinking, oh, that's how because they identify with the masculine, right? So they're thinking, well, this is
Right.
how I treat women. And so it's not unusual for a child that grows up in an abusive home for boys to copy what their father is doing and end up being abusers to women in their life. And also the girls are seeing women being treated that way and thinking, oh, this is the way I'm going to be treated. This is the way men treat women. And they come out, they pick abusers. So it
Right.
kind of models that. But
Yeah.
if you're divorced, at least they can have a normal when they're with the parent, should the court still give custody, and that's another big issue. They're seeing at least a healthy environment and feeling what a healthy environment is, and they have a contrast, but they don't have a contrast. Plus, there is the possibility or probability of the kids also being abused. And I often have women will tell me, we're going to say women and men, for women being most of the ones that are in the abusive relationships. Statistics show that more women are abused than men and more men are abusers, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't happen the other way. So we're just going to
Correct.
acknowledge that. But I had, oh, I just forgot the thought that I was going to say. Oh, it just totally left my mind as I was
Yeah.
making that. It was a good one.
Well, do you think about it? I was going to also add to what you said that there's also a spiritual element to all of this in this exact question. And I'd hate for us to not hit this
Mhm.
point. This might be in your notes to also share, but there is such an opportunity as what you could say the healthy parent, the one that's making the decision to set a boundary. There's such an opportunity when you set that boundary that hey, this is abuse, no more. When
Mhm.
you draw the line,
Mhm.
you're not just here on planet Earth going through the motions. It's actually a spiritual,
Yes.
it is a spiritual war. And when you draw the line, you're not supposed to know how it's like the 12 steps ahead, but it's a decision
Yes.
that you're saying no more, and this stops at this generation.
Yeah.
I will take this battle so that my kids don't have to.
Yeah.
And that plays out in the natural, where then you get to the family does separate. And,
Mhm.
whether that goes divorce or the father gets his healing and God reconciles in that way, that's God's story to write. And you got, you walking through that with the Lord. But I think that there's such an important place of understanding the revelation of when I'm drawing the line. It's not me, it's not you against the court system and against him. It's actually like knowing that this is not okay in our home. God says it's not okay. And when
Yeah.
you're drawing the line, you're drawing that line unto God.
Yep.
And then you're severing, like you're cutting the head off of that demonic stronghold
Yeah.
that who knows how many generations it's hit in that abuse. You
Yeah,
know what I
I
mean?
you are so correct with that. And I'm so glad you brought that up. And kids will tell you that. I know mine, and when I was growing up as a little girl in that home where my father was so abusive with my mother. And of course, the drinking was there, but that was secondary. The abuse was the biggest
Mm,
problem. I begged my mom to leave. At 8 years old, I offered to pack everything and unpack everything. And I just said, Mom, I can't rent a place. So you go find the place and then I'll do everything because I knew that that wasn't healthy. And my kids did not want me to, then I stayed in it. My mom stayed in it till she never left. And
yeah,
I did the same thing. And my kids were angry and they were like, what, why did you do that? It's like they look at the healthy parent and they recognize you have the capability to do something different. And it's not that they excuse the abuser, but they intuitively know that the abuser is not capable of getting them out. They look to you
right.
as the one that can help them and basically save the family from the abuser. And you are the one that often gets the blame later,
Yeah,
or even when you're in it and gets disrespect from them because they think, why didn't you do it? And people will tell me it's almost as if they're giving him a pass, but it's not that they're giving them a pass. It's that they intuitively know that they can't depend on that person to help them. They're looking
right.
at you and saying, what, you're the one that can do something, do it. Like I was not saying to my dad, like, get us out of here. I was saying to my mom, get us out of here.
Right.
Yeah. So that's,
Children know, children understand patterns.
yes, they do.
You don't actually have to write it out for them.
Nope, from a very young age, very,
Right.
very young age. So that is I love that. You are the one, no matter, and I've read that many times in books that people have written where they're telling abuse victims, you cannot know steps 1 through 10, steps one
Yeah.
through 12. You have to just do the next indicated right thing, which is the abuse isn't okay. I have to stop it, and then
Right.
you have to worry about the other steps later. Or if you take it all on, it's so overwhelming that you won't leave.
Right.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
I love that. How now, this is another huge area, and I know people are probably thinking this as they're listening. How can you talk about abuse and the abuser during the time that you are still in the marriage with that person or the relationship?
Yeah.
Secondly, during the divorce, because that's tricky with the courts, and then after the divorce, how can you label it abuse? Can you call him an abuser? How do you handle that whole area?
That's quite a conversation. Um, in my field of work now, I get women calling in that are just mad. They've drawn the line and
Mhm,
now they have this like safe place where they can begin to process and heal. And
mhm,
all of a sudden you realized what you were living with, what you were putting up with,
mhm.
and then put in the mama bear mode
Yeah.
and you're mad. And my personal conviction as I'm encouraging these women calling in is that I never I would never encourage a parent, a mother, let's say, to speak to their child by calling their child, calling their father the abuser.
Hmm.
I have come across that though, where there are some women that have come to the revelation that they've all been in abuse and they've drawn the line, and the mother feels that she needs to tell her children by calling their father the abuser and no longer father. I
Even when they're
personally don't
young,
have that.
even when they're young, like little.
Yeah, I've come
Yeah.
across that, and personally I like to say that right here straight off on this podcast that I don't encourage that
Hmm.
and seek the Lord on that. But here's where we get
And
to,
your attorney, because you
yes,
can get
and
in
your attorney.
trouble with the courts for doing something that's called parental alienation. And
Right,
they're very big on that. And that is if you are trying to turn the kids against the other parent, then you can end up losing part of your custody because you are doing parental alienation. And
right.
it's black and white. It's not like, oh, but he is an abuser and you
Mhm.
were telling the kids that he was an abuser and you just got it all these years you've been
Right,
living with abuse. So you got to be really careful with that. I agree with you. I that even though that true, there's other ways to do it.
right,
And give me some
right.
examples.
So let's say you're living with the abuser.
Hmm.
Um, you call out the sin.
Yeah.
Let's say, father has a anger episode where he just goes crazy through the house. It leads the whole family into fear.
Hmm.
You can, in a very practical way, collect your children, go to the car, go to the park,
Hmm.
and don't leave too much time and just tell them, like, hey, how dad did this and this, that wasn't okay.
Hmm.
Those are usually moments where I would encourage like asking the kids, like, what did that do for you? What do you need right now? Let's get some fresh air. Giving they're kids, so giving them a place to just you can't process if you're a child, you can't get in the car yourself.
Hmm.
So giving them a space to at least be able to process what just happened,
Hmm.
right? And then back to your question, while in a divorce, what does that look like, right?
Well, and let me just say, just to kind of clarify a few things on that. Describing the behavior, definitely, that wasn't okay. Describing the feelings. I know that that feels scary. How did that feel to you? You know, what just talking about what was going on for them. Of course, always doing it in age appropriate language. So the older the children get, the more that you can change the verbiage and maybe you might say, instead of calling dad the abuser, which is a label, we describe
Right,
behavior. It is
right,
abusive when somebody does something to make you afraid on purpose, or yelling names at you is abusive. That is not okay. Things like that. Because,
right,
again, especially as you get into teenagers, you're getting into like recognizing, hey, they can have boyfriends and girlfriends that could be doing these same things. And so basically describing the behavior and saying things like that wasn't okay and validating the feelings is the best way to do it.
yes,
And then
yes,
I think I'm really big on teaching people how to detach in relationships. And the first thing that kids do is, especially when they're young, is they think it's my fault. Daddy got angry at mommy because I wasn't good enough, or because I didn't do my homework, or the argument the parents get into because the kids were fighting. And then all of a sudden dad comes in screaming and yelling and swearing, and mom says, okay, that's too much, I'll handle it. And then dad yells at mom. The kids think, oh, that was my fault. That was my fault. So basically, to help them understand that this is not their fault, I like to teach them how to detach, which is to separate yourself from other people's behavior and recognize, and you can do this at a very young age, that it is not about you. It's not about you making somebody else do something. It's about how somebody else, who that person is, and what that person chooses to do. There were other choices. It's like that was, daddy
Right.
chose to yell. You didn't make daddy yell. Again, you make this age specific. You didn't make daddy yell. You didn't make daddy get mad. Daddy's responsible when daddy gets mad. And then you
Right.
talk to them about your own feelings. Like, I know when people get mad at me that I think, oh, what did I do to make them mad? But then I have to remember that I didn't make them mad. Like, yes, I did what I did, but they didn't have to get mad. They didn't have to act that way. So basically, you're trying to teach them that they can separate themselves and not feel responsible. And that really helps because it gives
That's
them
good.
resilience and it helps them not personalize what's going on. And obviously, the same thing about the divorce. It's not your fault that we're getting divorced or that we're separating. This is not about you.
Right.
You didn't do this. You can't fix this. And it really helps kids to not take all this stuff that's happening and personalize it, which is what children typically do.
So good. I loved everything that you said. You made me think though. I would hate to end this podcast and not really hit this also where when you're in the abuse
Hmm.
and there's children around, so there's no separation, no divorce, you're in it.
Yes.
What if I could share with women that are in that right now? I would say that you really need to have a few people that understand abuse around you
Of course.
because in these situations, it's oftentimes where the mother should actually be calling authorities,
Hmm.
but there's a downplay because they're living in abuse. So there's this fear of this is actually not safe, but I'm gonna just like walk on eggshells and not don't want to escalate things and make him mad.
Yes.
But I just have to say this that, it's a process and even understanding what you're living in
Hmm.
when you're living in an abusive relationship. Nothing is really instant.
Right.
There's you unpack day by day, page by page, but I look back and I think, oh man, there's so many times where I should have actually called authorities, but I didn't because I was living in such a state of eggshells that
Hmm.
I wouldn't want to upset him.
Well, and you do have to be wise and be careful that if there's something that you're going to do that, especially if there's physical abuse, that will escalate the abuse, that you have to think safety first. So anytime you're dealing with
Yes.
physical abuse, somebody that we call a batterer who just literally goes crazy and just, literally hurts you, puts you in the hospital, or has the ability to escalate to that, then and is threatening to do those kinds of things, that you have to be really careful when you leave, and you have to be careful when you do something like call the police out to the home to settle, to protect you in a fight or to settle a fight. You need to know that whether or not it's going to be safe to be there when that person comes back. But if
Right.
you are in that situation, we have to say that you need immediate help from
Right.
domestic violence center. Call the police department, ask them what are your rights, what are your options, what you can do, find a safe place to go, have your bag packed, have a family member or a friend that you can go to when it gets really unsafe, and be taking that very seriously. So that is something that needs to be said. But I think, and I'm going to have an attorney on one time soon where I talk to an attorney about what the rights are and how the court systems work. And but one of the things that I think attorneys will tell you, that if you've never called the police out and then all of a sudden, or during a custody case or during a divorce, you're saying this person is abusive, but you have absolutely no record of ever needing to call the police, that is a weak case.
Yes, yes, that's a part of my story from when I had two infants over a decade ago, where I did not know what to do,
Hmm.
but I knew it wasn't safe. And I knew that I couldn't get any conversation that would lead us towards help. And I went to the courthouse, asked for a restraining order, and the lady actually kind of just chuckled when she asked me if I had any police reports, and I said no.
Mm.
She's like, you can't just do that. Like,
Yeah.
and it was just a brand new world to me back then, 10 to 12 years ago. Um, and God does bring redemption, but it is something to think about. And if you're listening to this podcast right now and you're actually feeling fear because you know you should be making a call,
Hmm.
that's your sign to make a call. Start with, the call at on our Eagles Wings website, or if this is immediate, go straight to the hotline for domestic abuse.
Yes.
But yes, if you're starting to feel like he would be so mad if he found out, then that's a sign,
Hmm.
right?
Definitely. Yeah. So as far as talking about the abuser, like during the divorce or after the divorce, again, take your attorney's advice
Right.
on what you need to be careful. And some abusers are kind of hands off after the divorce. They're just done and they're moving
Hmm.
on. Some, if
Yeah.
they're narcissistic, are going to stay in your life and try to battle you for the kids constantly and try to make your life miserable. And it's always a power play. And if anything is said that they think they can claim parental alienation, they're going to go back and do it. So
Yeah.
you've got to look at your situation too and figure out, what. But I think one of the easiest ways to talk about it, but not really, is you don't say your father is an abuser. Like
Oh,
even
yeah.
unless they're teenagers or they're adults later, and you could say, look, this was clearly abuse. I could not stay in this. These are the things that I learned about abuse. And the kids have their own experience. They kind of know, but some of them
Yeah.
side with the abuser later. But to say something like, well, I know, and it's sort of, you talk about it like you're talking about someone else. Well, when I'm around people that treat me in ways that I know I don't deserve to be treated, I remember that that's not about me. I remember that so it's almost like you're not talking about their dad, but you're
Mhm.
talking about a parallel person or somebody that's in your own life. And kids pick up a lot from stories. So you can
Yeah.
be really, really good at presenting the truth to them in ways that don't actually go pinpointed like your dad is, because that is not good.
Oh, yeah.
We don't want to
Yeah.
try to make them hate them, but we do need to speak to the reality of the situations that children are experiencing by validating their emotions, by
Hmm.
validating their perceptions, which is what they experience from their point of view, and rather than the opposite of invalidating, which is trying to make them feel better in the moment. Oh, that wasn't so bad. Daddy was only tired, or that was just, oh, mommy just said the wrong thing, and daddy
Mm.
just, was tired. I shouldn't have said that. That's doing the exact opposite. That's invalidating.
Right. Right. And I'd like to add that when you're looking at a case where they're going through divorce, um, 10 out of 10 times, all with all the families that I've worked with, the children, nothing is new to them.
No.
So you actually see in all of these cases that I'm working with, the they've lived this way for so long, and then here's a divorce. And yes, it changes things a little bit, but the behavior from both adults isn't new,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
so they actually, something in them kind of rises up where they're feeling affirmed a bit,
Hmm.
right? And
Yeah,
so
that
I
makes
see that
sense.
often.
Yeah, definitely. So that goes into the next question. How do you tell children that you're going to split up, and how do they initially respond?
Yeah, I think really it is case by case on this one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of different individuals and children with the different ages. I've seen oftentimes relief on the child when they're given the news
Hmm.
because you really don't know how much weight they carry
Yeah.
living in an abusive home. Like, we're not inside their heads.
True.
We can have discernment and we can even host, nightly check ins, but we're not in their heads. And so I think that when you deliver something like, hey, mom and dad are now separating or divorcing, you can typically read the room right away.
Hmm.
And the women that I'm working with, the families that I'm working with, it's oftentimes where the children are in, you actually see them wanting to do something like free and fun. Like
Yeah.
they dance differently, they move their bodies differently. And
Mm.
I think that I'm not a psychologist, but I've heard these stories enough to where it has my attention. I've
Wow.
witnessed this where it's almost like they see someone has set a healthy boundary for them,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? They get to be children.
Yeah.
And nobody really wants divorce. Like, that's when you're going into marriage, that's not what you want. And
Right.
I don't want to be the person that's like, divorce is the way. Or, I'm
Yeah.
not encouraging people to divorce, but we're here talking about abuse and
Exactly.
how to handle it.
Yeah. And
Unfortunately, that gets all messy and, you know, we need to really dissect it. When there's
yeah.
abuse, we don't mask the abuse. And so with the children, same for them. Like sometimes these conversations go straight into like the church culture.
Hmm.
But if we're just focusing on children today and we have this topic where it's
Yeah.
like, what does it look like telling your kids about divorce? This is the real thing.
Yeah.
It's, hey, this is unhealthy.
Yeah.
And we're drawing a line and we seek God. If you're a faith-based family and you're seeking the Lord for healing and intervention, I encourage women that are truly, they desire the Lord's will. I encourage them to have communication and vocabulary with their children that's like, we can have our own plan of how God's going to heal,
Hmm.
but God's actually God.
Right.
And so if we could have been praying for daddy for this many years and we had some plan, like we could draw it out with crayons on how God was going to change daddy or
Right.
our
Heal our
family.
family. Yeah.
Yes, heal the family. Then it's like, wow, we have to hit that place where we just surrender
Hmm.
the outcome,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah. And I think the relief for some kids too is that, remember, kids in dysfunctional families take on roles. So some of these
Yes.
kids are taking on the role
Mhm.
of worrying about mommy and the other siblings and wanting to protect, like I did, and feeling like they're carrying the weight of that parent and the parents, being abused or the other children being abused, and feeling like they have to be the one to do that. So that is a relief when they don't have to do that anymore. Now, some of the children might be, or a child might be more aligned with feeling sorry for the abuser and
Right.
kind of making excuses for the abuser. So that one might be like worried, like, well, what's daddy going to do when he's not with us? Or who's going to take care of daddy? And, you might have to say something that would kind of comfort that child. And again, depending on the ages, some of the teens could be angry, or some of the teens could
Right.
be, who knows. But I like going back to what you said, still requires standing up for what is wrong and putting a stop to it, regardless
Right.
of the reactions, and then working through the reactions and working
Right.
through each child's concerns and fears and all of those things. So, and that's the next question. How do you deal with the feelings your children have about you and the abuser?
You know, I could say from firsthand that it's so important to let each child have their own feelings,
Hmm.
to let them have their big feelings. Um, I remember making sure one of my children had a really good pillow because this child just wanted to like hit something
Hmm.
and they didn't know how to, they needed to move their body with the flood of emotions.
Hmm.
They wanted to feel heard in this part of
Hmm.
the story, but they didn't feel heard.
Yeah.
And they, you know, there's a lot of children out there that might actually freeze up
Hmm.
where they're not sure yet if they could share emotions
Hmm.
and they just simply say, I don't know.
So getting a feeling wheel is really good, an age appropriate feeling wheel. There's a lot of those out on the
Yeah.
internet now where you have, the different emotions, or I've seen them for young children where they have pictures of, like simple drawings of kids like with faces, like maybe it's just a face because kids recognize emotions.
Yeah.
And being able to say which one of these are you feeling. And we can't forget that therapy is an option for kids. Like therapy is super helpful, and
Yeah.
that therapist can help them put words to their emotions. And I think that especially with teenagers or younger kids, the idea that kids can't yell is a little bit rigid, because when you're full of emotion and you've got to get it out, sometimes that comes out loud and big, like you said.
Yeah.
So there has to be room for your kids to express the emotion. Expressing the emotion isn't wrong. And
Yes.
even saying, I used to be really big on kids not saying, I hate you. I used to be like, you're not allowed to hate me. And now I'm like, no, hate is a word that is full of feeling. Part of hate is you don't hate something that you don't feel strongly about. So hating something means God hates things. God says that he hates, in fact, the Bible scripture we use for
He
people,
hates
I hate
divorce.
divorce. But that again is about, actually, I hate the violence that's in the marriage,
Right.
what that scripture really means. But so even allowing kids to say, I hate you, I hate you, I hate daddy,
Yeah.
I hate my life, is okay. Now, when
Yeah.
you get into teenagers swearing at you and calling you names, that's where you draw a line. You can have feelings, you can have emotions,
Right.
you can have expression and all of that in their emotional expression. You can be angry, but you can't hit stuff, you can't hit people, and you can't swear, and you can't call, like you're not going to say you are a, what, and put some words to that are not okay, because that crosses a line.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'm trying to not laugh when you're talking. You took my notes,
Oh,
but we
I
use,
didn't see your notes.
I know I didn't, I'm just saying you took my notes and my scribble over here, but
Yeah.
the emotional wheel has been a big one for us. We have it printed out, and for a good chunk of a season, we would keep it at our table for dinner.
Mm.
And not everyone felt like doing it every night, and we still do it, but we don't really need that physical wheel anymore. But using that as also just the setting boundaries in your home.
Hmm.
So you get to set the boundaries. Like
Hmm.
that's why you're a parent, I'm a parent, and they're not.
Right.
And so when, let's say there is a brand new separation or divorce, and you're implementing how can we make our home safe in emotionally safe and a place where we can all start to process some feelings, right? And
Hmm.
so bringing in a little bit of the emotional wheel where we're asking them, um, name one story, one interaction you had this week where you felt anger. And it's an interactive place at the table where, I encourage everyone to participate,
Hmm.
and teenagers don't always want to. But when you take the emotional wheel, it really helps portray not just using the actual emotional wheel for what it is, but also it helps partner with you, especially if you're a single parent. Take the partnership, but you get to create this boundary where when we're here, we're setting a tone. If someone's sharing their feelings,
Hmm.
we can make a rule that says you can't correct someone for
Yeah,
sharing their feelings,
right.
right?
Can't
And
tell them
there's
they're
going to be a
wrong.
flood,
Yeah, you can't tell them they're wrong.
right?
Yeah, feelings are feelings. They're not right or wrong, but
Right.
actions can be wrong. So
Yeah.
that's where we can be angry, but we can't slug our fists through the wall, or we can't slug our sibling because actions can be wrong, but feelings, being angry is okay, but hitting somebody is not.
Right.
Yeah, that's really good.
Right.
And you've kind of talked about this a little bit, but you've got so many good points in this. How do you point your children toward God during this time? And I just in case you don't say it, I don't want to steal your thunder, but you said this to me. I don't know if you said it on our podcast or in person, but you said children get to have their own Holy Spirit. There's not just a big people Holy Spirit, but the Holy Spirit is for kids too. And I loved that.
Oh, yeah. I think it's our duty, it's our job as parents to pave the way for them to understand the whole Bible
Hmm.
and who God really is. And they get to participate in it.
Yeah.
And that it's not mom being Holy Spirit, or because they're a kid, they, you know, should stay in their little kids' Bible. I mean, to be honest, nothing against kids' Bibles, but my kids, by the time they were, I don't know, third or fourth grade, had adult Bibles.
Hmm.
I have a strong conviction of just not making things kiddie.
Hmm.
Yes, always be age appropriate with certain content, but when we're going to the gospel, it's like Jesus, we saw him when he was a kid and he took off from his parents and was, sitting in the temple, and
Yeah.
so there's a place we can partner with that, and believing that we need to decide who is God
Yeah.
in our home.
Yeah.
And you really can't go off once you have a good clear focus there. You stay the path, and then you make decisions based on that.
Hmm.
You pray based on that,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
having that foundation for the kids, it's like I'll ask them in the morning on the way to school, what do you believe in God for? I hate to do just the have a good day. I'm like, come on, like tell me, like what are you stirred up for? Like what's God going to do today? And so creating that culture at home
Hmm.
where God is really alive in our home. We talk to him, he talks to us. Wash those kids in the word,
Hmm.
even if it's just like we all have these hard days at home where someone's always in a bad mood, or
Yeah.
like there's just hard days. And one tactic I've used for a while that I like to encourage other women to do is that we can acknowledge that there's heavy emotions, but we can declare truth just through our home. It doesn't mean we're directly reacting to someone, but
Hmm.
let's just say there's heaviness in the home. I can open up, Isaiah 54 and start declaring. I was doing this morning, actually. I'm like, all your children shall be taught by the Lord, and great shall be the peace of your children. In righteousness you shall be established. And so, just like speaking that out loud, it's not that it's not that the child is trying to talk to me and I'm only talking in Bible,
Yeah.
but you could read the room, right?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
you could just start speaking truth, like read the word, walk through the house, like make something in the kitchen and just read the word. And I think the kids pick up on that.
Yeah.
They
And
do.
I think too that I know for me that because I would react to my husband, and then often would feel like such a hypocrite when I talk to my kids about the Bible. And now that I look back, and I still did, but I had this battle inside of me, like, okay, well, I'm not perfect and I'm not doing this. And I think we just have to be honest and real that we're people and that we're struggling and that dysfunction is hard and that there's a lot of emotions and there's a lot of stuff going on and that you're trying your best and God forgives and you're learning and on all this and still be able to say, because you're not, we're kind of talking like we're talking about the children, but we understand that those of you that are going to be going through this, you're going to be a wreck. It's going to be overwhelming to you too. You're going through your
Mhm.
own grief process and there's a lot going on in you. So it's not that you're just going to be like rising up in the morning and being strong every morning and just being,
Yes.
super clear and confident. You're going to be going through your own struggles, your own feelings. And, so you can be real too, as long as you
Yeah.
don't put your emotions on your children to carry or give them the impression that they've got to hold you up, but that, mommy's handling this, mommy's taking care of this, mommy's an adult. I'm okay. I've got places and people that can help me. But yeah, you're going to see me crying. You're going to see me upset. You're going to see me overwhelmed. You're going to see me sad, and you're going to see me angry. And as much as possible, try not to talk about things in front of your children, like
Hmm.
to your attorney, to your therapist, to your
Right.
friends, and let them overhear your conversation.
Definitely.
But that's the next question. How can you support your children's cycle of grief with all their losses and changes when they're going through it? Because we know the cycle of grief is the denial, shock,
Uh-huh.
the anger, the bargaining, where you go back and forth and try to figure out, well, how could this have been prevented? Or what could I do to change this? Or what could God do to change this? And then the
Hmm.
sadness, and then finally acceptance. And so your
Yeah.
kids are going to, and that's not in a linear line like you go through it and then you never go back. It's back and forth and, kind of all over. But those are the stages of grief.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
how do you support your kids going through that?
Yeah. Someone told me a while back, and I watched it happen, and I've watched it in several cases where the mother goes through the grief cycle first, a
Hmm.
few rounds, and all of a sudden the kids begin to.
Hmm.
And it's like the kids now have a place where they see mom not even quite established, but she's coming around. Like the kids watched mom go through the ugly and come on out, and the kids are seeing a little bit of forward movement, and
Hmm.
that's when the kids then really enter the grief cycle.
Hmm.
And when they said that to me, I didn't really understand what that would look like, but I watched it, and I see it in families. And thank God for that, if it goes that way,
Yeah.
because the woman needed a little bit of her own rawness
First.
while the kids were like, what's even happening?
Yeah.
Right. And then all of a sudden the kids are like, oh, and they start their cycle.
Hmm.
And 100% do not talk, even the feelings and emotions, like all of that stuff. Really be careful. You're not on a phone call in the room next door where your kids are. Like, make sure, because I encourage women like to not even take calls while their kids are at home
Hmm.
on that, because you don't want to create more instability
Yeah.
with them. And
Well,
they don't need to hear it.
it's easy now. You can step with cell phones. You can step outside.
Right.
You don't
Right.
have to even be in the same house while you're
Yeah.
talking
And I
or in the
think
car.
back to your question, I think it's really important to not just seek practical help in
Hmm.
this, but also ask God to show you the resources He wants to provide you.
Hmm.
Because I remember praying that through with a few women, and all of a sudden it seemed like there was no option. Like, let's say there's several families that couldn't afford any therapy. A lot of times in these situations, finances are a huge mess because
Yes.
of the separation, or women that have been in abuse oftentimes have been in financial abuse where they haven't had any access to
Money.
funds, and they're just like, there's no money to pull on. How am I, when we need it the most, how can I even get my kids in a therapist's office? Um, Several times I've witnessed us just taking prayer calls and Googling and researching, what are some resources? And sure enough, there are resources. There is one in particular for families that have already been in the court system with any type of DV.
Hmm.
There's a California victims
Hmm.
compensation.
Fund. Yeah.
There's resources out there,
Yeah.
and feel free to reach out to Karla or myself. I know I have a few on hand
Hmm.
of just women I refer that are really trained in domestic abuse and are licensed therapists that work through different fundraising and different programs, so that money is not a problem.
Yeah. And there are
It,
counseling centers that have sliding fee scales, and there are,
sliding, yeah.
and universities, if you've got any university near you that has any marriage, family therapy, master's programs, psychology, counselors, master's program, or PhD, all of those students have to have what they call practicum hours, and they usually have a clinic there where you can go in and have very low cost, like $5 or $10 sessions.
Mhm.
And those therapists are supervised by very competent supervisors. So that is a place that you can get help that is
Yes.
readily available if you live in a town that has anything like that.
Yes. I send so many families to a few programs like that.
Yeah.
They'll take whatever you can pay.
Yes. And
And
it's
it and
really
it and they
helpful.
have the supervisors are licensed therapists.
Hmm.
So
Yep.
it's great.
Yep. Totally.
So there are
So
resources.
yeah, so we've kind of talked about this, like how can you support your child's healing journey, finding their voice, which is, and validating them and giving them the space to work through their changes. Is there anything that you would like to add to what we've already said?
I really want to add that you don't have to focus on forcing it.
Oh,
You don't have to focus on pulling information out of them for their own healing, or you trust the process, have some bullet points.
mhm,
Yes, get your kids with a therapist, have some solid biblical truth pumping through your home.
mhm,
Um, Touch base with the teachers if you need to. Uh, I'm I'm shocked through the stories I've heard, the cases I've worked with, is so many women that have been impacted by public school teachers, public school psychologists that are so well trained
nice.
in abuse. And
Mhm,
I say that like so shocked. It's just that we were in homeschool for years, and um I'm getting to know the public school system and the people that work there and how well they're trained. Not all of them, but I hear a lot of stories from different cases. And so I think it's important that we remind ourselves that just not put the pressure on that you have to force their healing.
Hmm.
Each child has their own story. They're going to have their own testimony,
Yeah,
you
true.
know? So, and I think as women, as mothers, we get so used to like, oh, we can feel for our kids, or we want to just rush them out of any discomfort and into comfort.
Yes.
But you don't want to be Holy Spirit to them,
Well,
right?
and
You
then
want
what that does is that we don't realize that our desire, and which is really an anxiety and a discomfort inside of us, that our kids are uncomfortable, that by fixing it or brushing it under the rug or telling them you're going to be okay, you're going to be okay, is really kind of invalidating. It's kind of saying we need to be mirroring back to them like I can tell you're sad, and our face needs to
right.
show that we're sad with them, or that we're upset with them, or that we get it, that they're angry, and we need to validate those feelings back to them. I can see you're angry. I can see you're upset. I can see
Yeah,
you're really sad today,
yeah.
where everything in us is going, I want to give them donuts and make them not be sad. But that is just teaching them not to sit with their feelings.
100%. Yes.
So, what if the kids have anxiety attacks and or struggle with nightmares or fear that the abuser is going to come back into the home?
Man, I think that's where I encourage women, like we talked about earlier, to really give them a space to
Hmm.
share what they're feeling.
Hmm.
Allow them to have the feelings. Don't try and fix it.
Right.
Speak truth, though,
Hmm.
right? So there's
Hmm.
like, you don't react with like, oh, well, you shouldn't feel that way
Right.
because
Right.
God says this,
Yeah.
but allow
Yeah.
them to have their feelings. Um, and then make sure, I've heard of stories where there has been children really struggling with exactly that anxiety attacks. And this child needed Psalms 91 printed
Hmm.
because he had seen the patterns of his mother reading that over
Hmm.
him when he was struggling.
Hmm.
And so the child asked the mother, can you print that out? And
Yeah.
he put it by his bed.
Yeah.
And he told his family that at night, after visits with his father, he would struggle with such bad anxiety attacks that all he could do was look at the poster, and
Mm.
he had to believe it was true. And that is a story that is a perfect example of, it's a little extreme. You don't always hear these stories,
Right.
but I can't help but to not share that, because it's not to put pressure on you that your child needs to be like crying out for a Bible scripture, but like it's to paint the picture that God does meet our children.
Yeah.
And the pressure is not on us to make sure that it happens and, like requiring it to happen. We just stand and believe for it.
Well, and but we can assure them like, okay, we can call the police if that happens, or but remember we changed the locks and the doors, we're safe here, and mommy has a plan. It's okay. You don't have to worry about that. I'll take care of that if that happens. And what the kid says, well, you didn't stop it before, you just say, you know what, I didn't, but I know now how to do that, and I will do that. So it's literally trusting the parent, trusting that there's a plan, and also trusting God, because that's what we do. We have a
Right.
plan, and then we trust God with what we can't control, right? We look at
Right.
God and say he's in control, and we know he'll take care of us. What about all the maze of court hearings, ordered visits, monitored visits, reunification? I know we don't have to talk about all the legal minutia with
Uh-huh.
that, but how do you support your kids through that? That's really painful to watch. They don't want to go, they don't want to get in the car, They don't want to be in that situation. They're nervous, they're anxious, they're upset, they're mad.
Yeah.
How do you do
It's
that?
so hard.
Yep.
It's so hard. A lot of the families we work with are in that right now. And, you know, I all of these questions I automatically answer with something that is going to feed your spirit. And then we look for the practical, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think right off the board, we got to look for God in the process and let go of the control
Mm-hmm.
because it is a common pattern for women coming out of an abusive relationship where there's an abuser, there's also uh if the man is the abuser, the woman can tend to be like a controller because she's trying to make everything so that the abuser doesn't abuse,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And so really they're both in control. They're choosing to control, but it's the cycle together that's just not a good cycle. So there's this place of how do we trust the system in not the system of like the world, right? But the process, one step at a time. How do we make sure that we're advocating for our child for
Yeah.
safety?
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes the families that are in just really messy visitation orders where the children won't get out of the car and the police are called and all of that, typically the judge will end up ordering a child counsel,
Mm-hmm.
kid's attorney that whether you have a kid's attorney or not, um, as the parent that's on this podcast right now and pursuing how to do this best, I would say to document every time. Just have
Yeah.
a notes tab.
Yeah.
Anything easy for you. Don't give yourself another job searching the internet. Just have a notes tab and document dates and children's behavior and what that looked like for them physically and
Mm-hmm.
emotionally. Because um, in a lot of these families, there is a pattern where they were having a court ordered visit and the next morning the child is sick and there's really not sickness going around, but they have like stomach pain.
Yeah.
They're dealing with trauma. There's black under their eyes where they're just in the thick of it. Those need to be documented. And I know it's painful to look for those things.
Yeah.
You know, you
Yeah.
don't want to look for those things really, but um this is the process,
Yeah.
right? And we always want it to be done faster,
Yeah.
but this is the process that you don't want to rush,
Right.
you know?
And you want to talk to your attorney about those things because, again, that's
Yeah.
legal advice. Like, is there anything that I can do to turn it into, supervised visitation, or can we get these things cut off? That's all legal advice. But
Yeah.
yeah, preparing your kids is, again, I think it goes back to allowing them to have their feelings, allowing them to say what they need to say, and then speaking reality to them, like, we don't have a choice, like, or that's something you need to tell the judge, or I think you need to talk to your counselor about that, without like telling them what to say, because then we're accused of doing that. But yeah, there's
Yeah.
ways to handle that. So all right, this has been really heavy. I want you to pick a few testimonies that you would like to share with the people that are listening or watching so that they can kind of see how this all fits together and how God works in this.
Yeah. All right. So there's a family that has um been through the court system and they have court ordered visits with father,
Hmm.
the children do. And the children have been very uneasy, but they know they have to go, right? And so one of the children suffered immediately with specific panic attacks
Mm-hmm.
and thinking that the child thinking that they were going to vomit,
Mm-hmm.
but there was no flu.
Right.
It was very clear to this parent that
Mm-hmm.
it was emotional stress.
Sure.
And it went on for months. The child still had to go to the visits. It was documented well. It was brought to the kid's attorney,
Mm-hmm.
and it led to this child beginning to really cry out. And he in this, in the biggest pain that this kid has endured, he began to cry out to the Lord in a way that the parent was just blown away. And so what ended up happening is this child, even though the parent didn't want to see this child go through this, it just felt like injustice,
Mm-hmm.
which is horrible to
Mm-hmm.
look at, right?
Absolutely.
There was a process, though,
Mm-hmm.
that God allowed that. There is a process where maybe the child that there, because there's a court order, we have to go. We don't know how this is going to turn, but we have to keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
This child ends up developing his language for tongues. He starts praying in tongues
Mm-hmm.
by himself at home. And the parent is then wondering, how did this happen? What's going on? And the child ends up explaining to his family that he the only thing that helps him in his anxiety is to call out to God. And he knows that it's really hard, but he'll get through it. And when he prays in tongues, he edifies himself in the Lord, which scripture says.
Right.
And when that happened, that child not just told his parent, but he also told some friends at
Wow.
school.
Hmm.
And those kids at school went into the counselor's office
Oh my goodness.
and asked for that child to come and help them because they have anxiety.
Wow.
And I'm still hearing from this family that there's stories coming from this child. And I know this is an extreme testimony. You don't
Mm-hmm.
always hear
Mm-hmm.
a child talking about praying in tongues, and it is sometimes controversial. But here's where it's at. In this testimony, yes, there is parts of injustice.
Yeah.
Let's just say several injustice that the family had an abusive parent,
Yeah. So
and
that,
then they drew a line, and now the child has visitations that he's had distress across his entire body inside and out. That feels like injustice,
mm-hmm.
right?
It is. Yep.
And then the process of watching this family go through the court system, go through minors council, and watching God flip it where the child was heard. And not just that, but that the child has discovered he has a relationship with the Lord, and something in his anxiety, somewhere in that, he's leaning on the Lord without his mom even there.
Wow.
And not just telling his mom, like, there's some kids that just want to tell their parents something to make them happy. Or,
Mm-hmm.
there's the kids that just want to please their parent because they could see their parents stressed out. But this child is walking around telling his testimony and how, listen up, if you're dealing with anxiety, I got to tell you about my God.
Wow.
And that's a testimony that I will always share because that is what I believe every mother needs to hear.
Yeah.
We all need the reminder that, yes, be there for our kids, but God also is there for our kids.
That is huge. I mean, I can just sense from the people listening that I know, even just saying that to me, I have all adult children, but my children have
Yeah.
struggles. And I
Yeah.
literally just felt like this, like weight just went like I
Yes.
got chills, just like this weight of just lifted off of our shoulders because we cannot do it all as much as we love and as much as we want to fix and nurture. We
Right.
can't. But if going back to that part where you
Yeah.
very clearly said, I'm saying it stops here, and I'm not going to be fearful about everything that I
Hmm.
have to go through. I'm going to take a stand. Um, I think all of us that didn't do that at the right time can look back and say, oh,
Yeah.
how I wish I did. So there is, for such a time as this, there
Yeah.
is a time to do that. And I love that testimony. Like God is real, He's there, and He is a God that is your children's God. He's not just your God. And like you
Yeah.
said, there's no kid-sized Holy Spirit. That the Holy Spirit is the same for your kids as He is for
Right.
you. I mean, in fact, kids' faith, Jesus said
Yeah.
you need faith like a child because children's faith
Right.
is so big and it's so
Yeah.
simple and they don't have all of the preconditions and all of the what about this? They're just like, oh, God's there for me. Okay, God, I expect him to be there. Like their faith is just amazing. So that is really
Right.
beautiful. I love that. So we're going to put lots of resources in as much as we can think of, your website where they can reach out to you, my classes that are really helpful for people that are in any type of dysfunctional relationship, but abuse also. And then we can think of, some of the resources. We can't do like local ones because podcasts can go all over the world, but just some
Hmm.
ideas of places to reach out. But give hope to parents that are contemplating separating or divorcing from the abuser and they're so overwhelmed. Give hope to them that they can do it one step at a time. What would you like to say?
You can do it. You can do it. Uh, you're if you're in an abusive relationship right now,
Mm-hmm.
just know that that relationship you've had to be on autopilot in survival. But when you take that step, and this is I'm saying this to those that know that this is what I need to do for safety.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what I need to do because I know that God would want us to have a healthy, safe home,
And
right?
it's right. It's the right thing to
It's
do.
the right. God would not keep you in abuse
Mm-hmm.
because of a covenant.
Yes. And
And
because it's harmful and because of fear. Like it's kind of like what, like you said, what's the thing at the beginning that would keep you in, that keeps most people in abusive relationships?
fear,
You said fear, and you're so
fear.
right. So the fear would keep you from stepping out in faith with wisdom, then that is not the reason to stay.
And with hope, I challenge you to prepare yourself
Mm-hmm.
to surrender your plan of how you think God's going to rescue you.
Yep.
Surrender. I can say from my own testimony that I had to surrender it all business, um, homeschool, everything I knew was solid.
Mm-hmm.
I had to give it to God, and He took all of it because He wanted me in a season of healing where I didn't have identity in anything else, where I didn't have to even focus on anything else, just the healing time. And
Mm-hmm.
God will do that. So when you're looking for hope in this, there's encouragement in that if you start to feel like you're losing control of everything, that's a sign that God's moving. You're
Yeah.
letting go of control.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
you're willing for God to adjust things and you're going to get to the other side,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know?
That's really Awesome. So I think people are going to listen to this more than once because there's so much in it that they need to hear, not only for practical advice, but also for encouragement. Tawny, there was something that's so beautiful about you is that you have the ability to reach into their hearts and just give them so much faith. I know you have very strong faith. You follow God with a very, very courageous heart and with a strong belief, but I that comes out, and I think that that reaches into other people's hearts and lets them know that the same God that's there for you is there for everyone.
Yes.
It's like that's all you have to do is step out in faith and say, God, I need help, and he'll give you help. I mean, you're going to have to take some steps that are going to be scary, but he's
Right.
there for you. So I thank you so much for your just your heart, your encouragement. I know why God's called you to this position of executive director for Eagles Wings Global, and I know Judy has needed to let go for a while, but you're here now and she can, and I'm
Yeah.
just so thrilled. So how can listeners find you?
So we have a website is eagleswingsglobal.org.
Okay.
On the website, it has emails and phone numbers under contacts.
Okay.
Through there, you can directly reach us. There's a 949 number that you can text us to. You could text us and we can set you up with a mentor. We
Hmm.
can schedule a phone call. It's okay if you're thinking you need to call, but you don't even know what to say. Just call or text us
Yeah.
and we can help you process some immediate needs.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Getting support. And we
And
also reach out to, let's say you're wherever you're at in the world. It's part of our job to reach out to those communities. And let's say you are involved in a church and you feel that your church doesn't understand.
mhm.
It's actually a joy of my heart to reach out to that church with the invitation
Yeah.
and say, "Hey, we'd like to come in and help support this family and even train
Yeah.
the church leadership on what this looks like."
Yeah.
So, there's a lot of resources.
I just had this thought, like I know that there's been times where women have gone and men have gone into a pastor or ministry leader and just been shot down and been told you can't leave, you have to stay. And they want to be able to explain what abuse is to that person. And I know you would come along beside them in a phone call or a Zoom meeting and say,
Mhm.
this is what abuse is, and that's why it's not okay. You're probably going to make you way too busy now, but I
I love
think
it.
that um, yeah, we'll put all that there. And you also run Zoom groups for Love Does No Harm, groups where
Yes.
you like support people in abusive relationships to heal or who have been in abusive relationships to heal. And also that there are some in person in Orange County, California, if you just happen to be here. And
Yep.
I think that that's just so. This is awesome. Thank you again. I think there's going to be another podcast coming up. I'm going to think of something in the future
Yeah.
where I'm going to be
And
asking you
Carla,
back.
really quick, if you're at home listening to this and you don't want to wait, you can go on Amazon and get Love Does No Harm
Oh, perfect.
workbook
Okay, great.
and just order that, and that will help you process how you've been living and how to come out of this cycle of abuse.
Yeah, I'll put
Uh,
the link to that in the show notes. So
Perfect.
that'll
That
be
would be
there.
great. Such
Yes.
an easy tool to have on hand.
Hmm.
And yes, thank you for having me. This
Yeah.
is a pleasure. I enjoy this, and
Yeah.
I thank God every day for this job. So,
Yes. And we thank God that He put you in this job. I know a lot of women and men are going to be and children are going to be very
yeah,
blessed. So thank you
amen.
for watching. We're just praying that this podcast will just reach you in your place of need. Please share it with other people that you know need to hear it, and come back the next time. And God bless you. Bye.